Imagine this scene. You arrive home exhausted, broken both inside and out. You do not even have enough strength left to take off your shoes. You lie down, close your eyes, and in the midst of absolute exhaustion, a whisper arises in your soul. You should pray. But immediately another voice arrives, colder and more severe. Are you really going to do it like that, lying down? Do you think God will listen to you in that position? At that moment, a question arises that has tormented many believers. Is it a sin to pray while lying down? Am I unintentionally offending God? From childhood, we were taught that praying means kneeling, joining our hands, and showing reverence. But what if you are ill? What if pain leaves you unable to move? And what if your soul wants to speak, but your body does not respond? What you are about to discover may give you peace or confront you with an uncomfortable truth. Is it acceptable to pray while lying down? What does God think about it? Today I will tell you what Francis, a man who guided the church with tenderness and openness, shared from his pastoral experience about this deeply human and deeply spiritual question. Stay with me, because this revelation could forever change the way you pray and approach God. If you have ever felt that your prayers were not good enough because you were too tired to kneel, write in the comments, "Teach me to pray with my heart." This simple action will open your spirit to receive this special revelation. Throughout his journey alongside the weakest, Francis left teachings that go far beyond what most people know. Teachings that speak directly to those moments when we feel too weak, too tired, or too ill to pray as we believe we should. Dear friends, before continuing with this revelation that will change the way you see prayer, I want to share something special with you. If these topics touch your heart and you wish to go deeper into spiritual teachings that strengthen the soul, we have prepared a unique resource. The ebook The Power of the Rosary with Francis. Miracles, Protection, and Divine Graces. This spiritual treasure will help you learn to pray the Rosary with greater devotion and depth, discover the miracles and testimonies of those who have experienced its power, learn the most powerful teachings and quotations about prayer, receive a 30-day prayer guide with daily intentions to strengthen your faith, and gain access to special prayers for protection, healing, and deliverance. The Rosary was the great weapon of so many saints, and today it can become yours as well. Do not miss this opportunity to strengthen your spiritual life with a resource that has helped thousands of people. To download it, simply click the link pinned in the comments. And here is the first great revelation about this subject. Prayer comes from the heart, not from the body. When the heart is tired, simply lifting the soul toward God is already a great prayer. God is not scandalized by our weakness. On the contrary, He draws even closer when He sees us praying with the little we have. Sometimes the only thing we can offer is a sigh, a tear, or an intention expressed silently in our thoughts while we are lying down and exhausted. Can you imagine the heart of a father who sees his sick child trying to speak to him despite the child's weakness? Would he not be deeply moved by that effort born of love? Would he not draw even closer so that he could better hear that faint whisper? That is how God sees your prayers when you are too tired to kneel. The idea that we must physically assume a particular position for our prayer to be valid is precisely the kind of formalism that Francis invited us to question with the wisdom of the gospel. He, who knew the mysteries of prayer so intimately, reminded us that God looks at the heart, not at appearances. Few people know that many men and women of faith spent countless nights in intense physical suffering. Their bodies did not respond, fever consumed them, and the pain was sometimes so unbearable that they could not remain on their knees. Did they stop praying in those moments? Absolutely not. Their prayer changed and adapted, but it never ceased. During those nights of extreme pain, lying in their humble beds, they discovered something extraordinary about prayer. Sometimes it is precisely in our greatest weakness that the channel of communication with God becomes clearer, more direct, and more intimate. Prayer is the strength of humanity and the weakness of God. What does this mean? It means that when we present ourselves before God in our fragility, without pretenses or formalities, carrying only the naked truth of our need, something powerful happens. God becomes weak with love for us and bends down even farther to hear us. Imagine prayer as a conversation with the person you love most. When we speak with someone we love deeply, does it truly matter whether we are sitting, standing, or lying down? What matters is the presence, the attention, and the sincerity of that encounter. Francis often used this beautiful analogy. Prayer is like the breathing of the soul. Think about that for a moment. We breathe in every position, lying down, sitting, or walking. Breathing does not stop because of our posture. In the same way, prayer, the breathing of the soul, does not depend on the position of our body, but on the openness of our heart. During his many years as a confessor, Francis encountered countless souls tormented by the idea that their prayers were incorrect because they had not followed a particular formula or established posture. To a woman who blamed herself for praying while lying down during an illness, he said tenderly, "My daughter, do you think God fails to recognize the voices of his children simply because they are lying down? Would the one who created the body not understand its limitations?" Another little-known teaching is that prayer has different seasons, just as the year has spring, summer, autumn, and winter. There are seasons of vibrant and energetic prayer in which we can remain on our knees for a long time, absorbed in the presence of God. But there are also seasons of dryness, illness, and extreme exhaustion. These seasons are no less valuable, just as winter may appear empty while silently preparing the abundance of spring. Our prayers in times of weakness are preparing spiritual blossoms that we cannot yet see. Have you noticed how many saints experienced their deepest revelations during illness or periods of extreme physical weakness? Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, Therese of the Child Jesus, and, of course, Francis as well. This is not a coincidence. There is a mysterious spiritual fruitfulness in those moments when the body surrenders and only the naked soul remains before God. Do not worry about the form, he used to teach. Concern yourself with the truth of your encounter with God. This reminds me of Don Manuel, an elderly man I met in a small village. Throughout his entire life, he had been a man of unshakable faith. He prayed on his knees every night without missing a single occasion. But at the age of 92, severe arthritis prevented him from kneeling. The first night he had to pray while sitting, he cried in frustration. On the second night, he tried to force himself to kneel despite the pain, but he could not do it. On the third night, resigned to his condition, he prayed from his bed, simply speaking with God as one speaks with an old friend. That was when Don Manuel told me with shining eyes, "I felt the presence of God as never before, as though throughout my entire life I had been standing formally before a door, and now, in my weakness, that door had opened wide." This leads us to one of the most revolutionary teachings. Sometimes our physical limitations are not obstacles to prayer, but doorways to a prayer that is deeper, more sincere, and more essential. Tradition has taught us, and rightly so, that physical posture can help shape our inner disposition. Kneeling is a beautiful gesture of humility and reverence, but we are reminded that these things are means, not ends. They are aids to prayer, not prayer itself. If you can kneel, do so, he said. It is a beautiful tribute to God. But if you cannot, do not be troubled for even a moment. The knee God looks at most is the knee of the heart. And here we reach a crucial point. Many times, when we think our prayer has no value because it does not conform to certain formalities, we fall into precisely what Jesus criticized in the Pharisees: an excessive concern with external form at the expense of internal substance. There is a profound mystery in Christian spirituality that Francis fully understood. God has a special preference for drawing close to us in the moments of our greatest fragility. This is not an abstract theological theory, but a reality that runs throughout the entire Bible and the lives of the saints. Think about the powerful moments of prayer found in Scripture. Jesus lay with his face to the ground in Gethsemane, sweating drops of blood, so weakened that an angel had to come and comfort him. He was not standing in the temple with his hands raised, but fallen upon the earth, experiencing the very limit of human suffering. And yet, has there ever been a prayer more intense or more genuine? Or think of King David, who often prayed from his bed during times of illness or exhaustion. In Psalm 6 he cries out, "I am worn out from my groaning. All night long I flood my bed with weeping and drench my couch with tears." This prayer from a bed was not only heard, but became the word of God, bringing comfort to millions of people throughout the centuries. Francis himself lived this truth in a deeply personal way. One night, during a terrible illness that left him completely bedridden, he felt that he did not even have enough strength to form a prayer. In his extreme weakness, all he could do was sigh, "Jesus." Later, he would confess to a Franciscan brother, "I have never felt Jesus as close as I did at that moment. It was as though my entire life of prayer had been preparation for that one simple sigh." This experience of Francis reveals something extraordinary to us. Sometimes the most powerful prayer is the simplest and the most bare. The prayer born from the recognition that we have nothing to offer except our need for God. A few years ago, I visited Dona Esperanza, a woman who had suffered a stroke and was completely immobile in her bed. She could not speak and could barely move her eyes. Her daughter told me something astonishing. "Since Mother has been like this, there is something different in this room. Those of us who enter feel a presence, a peace we cannot explain." When I asked her more about it, she said with tears in her eyes, "My mother was always a woman of prayer. Now that she cannot say a single word, I believe her prayer has become purer and deeper. It is as though her entire being has become one continuous prayer." Is this not exactly what Francis embodied through his testimony? That sometimes, when we lose the ability to pray in the way to which we are accustomed, we discover a more essential and more genuine form of prayer. There is a phrase attributed to him that I especially love and that summarizes this teaching. God does not count the words of your prayers. He weighs the love with which you speak them. It does not matter whether those words are spoken while kneeling in a church or whispered from a hospital bed. What matters is the love, the sincerity, and the surrender. St. Paul wrote something revealing in his letter to the Romans. The Spirit helps us in our weakness because we do not know how to pray as we ought, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. Is that not extraordinary? Even when we do not know how to pray correctly, when we are too weak or confused, the Holy Spirit takes our weakness and transforms it into perfect prayer. And here we reach the second great revelation. Sometimes it is precisely in our weakness that God reveals himself most fully. Francis expressed this more than once throughout his ministry. His moments of greatest mystical union with God did not always coincide with solemn liturgical acts, but often with his own periods of fragility, when life asked him to embrace pain and total surrender. Ask yourself sincerely, when have you felt God closest? Was it when everything was going well and you could perfectly fulfill all your devotions, or during those moments of crisis, pain, and exhaustion when the only thing you could do was cry out, "Help me, my God"? For many of us, the moments of deepest encounter with God have come precisely when we ran out of strength, words, and formulas, when all we had was our naked need. This is the liberating message Pope Francis reminds us of. Do not be troubled if there are days when you cannot kneel to pray. Do not feel guilty if illness, exhaustion, or age forces you to pray from your bed. Do not think for even a moment that those prayers are less valuable. To pray is to speak to God with the heart, Francis teaches, and the heart speaks regardless of the body's position. In fact, there is profound wisdom in understanding that our vulnerability is not an obstacle to prayer, but often the path toward a more authentic prayer. When we are strong, healthy, and in control, our prayer can sometimes be tinged with subtle pride and self-sufficiency. But when we are weak, when we pray from within our limitations, there is no room for pretenses. It is then that we can experience what St. Paul discovered: when I am weak, then I am strong. Now that we understand this beautiful truth about prayer in moments of weakness, how can we apply it to transform our spiritual lives? The Pope also offered practical guidance that we can incorporate into the different circumstances of our lives. For those days when exhaustion overcomes you and you can barely remain awake, he recommended this simple practice. Before sleeping, place your heart in God's hands. You do not need to use many words. Simply say, "Lord, here I am. You know everything I need. I surrender myself to you." This simple prayer, offered sincerely from your bed, has immense value in the eyes of God. For times of illness, when pain seems to consume all your energy, Francis encouraged people to unite their suffering with the cross of Christ. "Do not waste your pain," he used to say. "Offer it as a prayer for someone who needs it." In this way, even groans of pain are transformed into powerful intercessions. A sick woman who simply says, "Jesus, this is for you," while enduring her pain, is offering a prayer as powerful as the most elaborate liturgy. For elderly people who can no longer kneel as they once did, he had special advice. Make your entire life a continuous prayer. Every breath, every heartbeat, and every moment of existence can be offered to God as an act of love. This may be the highest form of prayer, when our very life becomes a constant communication with God beyond words or postures. And for busy mothers and fathers who often fall asleep from exhaustion while trying to pray, he offered these comforting words: "The sleep of an exhausted mother, offered to God, is a beautiful prayer." God understands the language of sacrificial love. One of the most transformative practices he proposed was what he called the prayer of the present moment. It simply consists of recognizing God's presence in every circumstance and directing a brief word of love, gratitude, or supplication toward him. You can do this while lying in a hospital bed, stuck in traffic, waiting in line, or even while performing everyday tasks. God is always with you, Francis affirmed. Speak to him as you would speak to a friend walking beside you. Another practical teaching of his is that the quality of our prayer matters more than the quantity. It is better to pray one Our Father with your whole heart than to recite 100 prayers without attention or love. This is especially comforting for those who, because of illness or exhaustion, cannot sustain long periods of prayer. A brief aspiration such as, "Jesus, I love you," or, "O Lord, have mercy," spoken with sincere love from one's bed, may have more value than many hours of mechanical recitation. He also taught us to value what he called the prayer of waiting. In those moments when we feel spiritually dry, when it seems that our prayers bounce off the ceiling, or when we feel incapable even of forming words, the simple act of waiting in God's presence is a profound form of prayer. Sometimes he said, "The only thing God asks of us is to remain still before him, like a child who simply enjoys resting in the arms of his father without saying anything." Imagine how this understanding can transform those sleepless nights when pain or worry keeps you awake. Instead of becoming frustrated, you can turn those hours into a sanctuary of encounter with God. You do not need elaborate formulas or special positions. Simply acknowledge his presence, open your heart, and allow silence to speak. This liberating vision of prayer can radically transform our relationship with God. It frees us from the anxiety of doing everything correctly and invites us into a more natural, authentic, and continuous communication with the one who created us. According to Francis, prayer should be as natural as breathing. And just as we breathe in every position and circumstance, our prayer can flow freely in every moment and situation of our lives. Do you realize what a gift this is? You no longer need to wait until you are in perfect condition, in the right place, or in the correct posture to communicate with God. He is always accessible, always near, and always willing to hear the faintest whisper of your heart. And now we arrive at the deepest revelation Francis shared about prayer, especially for those who feel physically limited. This is a truth that has remained hidden from many, but it has the power to completely transform your spiritual life. Through his closeness to the most fragile and his years of pastoral experience, the Pope understood that sometimes what we consider our greatest limitations in prayer are precisely our greatest opportunities for intimacy with God. This is what he conveyed to those who came to him with open hearts. When you can do nothing more than offer your weakness to God, you are offering him the most precious gift, your absolute trust in his mercy. This is the essence of what we have discovered today. Praying while lying down when the body is exhausted is not merely acceptable or permissible. It can be a profound expression of humility and trust. It is an acknowledgement of our total dependence on God and of our condition as limited creatures before an infinite Creator. Let us review the powerful truths we have explored. First, prayer is primarily a movement of the heart toward God, not a physical posture. Francis showed us that God looks at the sincerity of our intention, not the perfection of our external forms. Second, our moments of greatest weakness can become our moments of most authentic prayer. When we have nothing to offer except our need, we present God with a prayer purified of all pride and pretense. Third, God has a mysterious preference for drawing close to us precisely when we feel weakest and most in need of him. Like a father running toward his injured child, God bends especially close to us in our fragility. And finally, we can transform every moment of our lives into prayer, turning even our physical limitations into opportunities for communion with God. Dear brothers and sisters, if this message has touched your heart, if it has relieved any guilt or concern you have felt about your prayers, I invite you to write in the comments. Have you ever wondered why you sometimes wake up with a feeling of uneasiness, as though something in your life were incomplete? Today I am going to share with you 3 powerful words that Pope Francis identified as essential to say before going to sleep and that can completely transform your life. If you are seeking true peace and protection, you need to hear this before it is too late. With his profound wisdom and pastoral sensitivity, Francis left us this teaching that many people do not know and that, unfortunately, we ignore every night. These 3 simple words have the power to transform your rest, your awakening, and your entire life. If you feel overwhelmed by worries or sense that something is missing from your spiritual life, this message is especially for you. Before revealing these 3 transformative words, I want you to know that thousands of people have already experienced significant changes in their lives by following this practice shared by Francis. It is no coincidence that you are watching this video right now. If you believe in the power of these teachings, write in the comments, I am ready to receive this blessing. What I am about to share with you is not a collection of empty words, but 3 specific actions passed down through years of spiritual experience and testimonies of transformation. Each of these words has a special purpose, and when you speak them before going to sleep, you open the doors to extraordinary protection in your life. Before continuing, click the subscribe button and activate the notification bell. Why? Because every week I reveal powerful secrets like this that can change your life. Do not miss any of these special messages that are helping thousands of people. Worries, stress, and problems may seem heavier at night, but after learning and applying these 3 words, you will notice an immediate difference in your life. Your rest will become deeper, your awakening more hopeful, and your days will be filled with a new light. Throughout his life, Pope Francis dedicated himself to helping people find a path of peace and protection. Among his many teachings, one stands out in particular, the importance of our final words before going to sleep. The practice I am about to share with you has the power to transform not only your nights, but every aspect of your life. Many of us live at a frantic pace, rushing from one place to another and facing constant challenges involving work, family, and responsibilities. Everything accumulates in our minds when night arrives. He understood this daily struggle perfectly. He observed how his brothers and sisters in faith, people like you and me, carried heavy worries with them until the very moment they went to sleep. Have you ever wondered why so many people wake up tired despite having slept for enough hours? Or why, on certain mornings, you rise with a feeling of heaviness in your heart? He discovered that this happens because we do not properly close our day. It is like leaving the door of your house open throughout the night. Anything can come in. Francis taught us that these words act like a master key that closes the doors to negativity and opens the gateways of protection. They are not magical words, but concrete actions that, when performed sincerely, have the power to transform our nighttime experience and, consequently, our entire life. Imagine for a moment that your mind is like a room. Throughout the day, this room fills with all kinds of objects: worries, fears, joys, and hopes. When night comes, we need to put this room in order before resting. The 3 words Francis shared with us are like a guide for perfectly arranging this inner space. The moment before sleep is especially powerful because that is when our subconscious mind is most receptive. Francis understood that the final words and thoughts we have before going to sleep continue working within our spirit throughout the night. That is why he placed so much importance on this moment. Before revealing these 3 transformative words, I want you to understand something crucial. Their power does not lie in simple mechanical repetition. He emphasized that they must arise sincerely from the heart and be spoken with true intention. Only then can they manifest their full power in your life. The first word Francis taught us to say before sleeping is, "Thank you." But this is not a matter of superficial gratitude. He showed us that there is a special way of giving thanks that has the power to completely transform our lives while we sleep. When we give thanks before sleeping, we acknowledge everything good that exists in our lives, even in the midst of difficulties. He explained that we often focus so intensely on our problems that we forget to see the blessings surrounding us. It is as though we were wearing dark glasses that only allow us to see what is negative. Do you know why he insisted so strongly on giving thanks before going to sleep? Because he discovered that gratitude has a transformative power over our spirit. When we give thanks, our mind is reprogrammed, our heart opens, and our life begins to change. It is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, everything becomes clearer. The practice of gratitude, he taught us, has 3 fundamental aspects. First, we should give thanks for the obvious blessings: our family, our home, our work, and our health. Second, and this is very important, we should give thanks for the difficulties we face. Yes, you heard that correctly. He said that trials are opportunities for growth in disguise. The third aspect, and perhaps the most powerful, is to give thanks for what is yet to come. He taught us that when we give thanks in advance, we are expressing profound confidence in God's plans for our lives. It is like planting a seed of blessing for the following day. But how can we put this teaching into practice? It is simpler than it seems. Before sleeping, take a few minutes to remember your day. Think of 3 things for which you are grateful. They may be great or small. Perhaps the embrace of a loved one, a delicious meal, a problem that was resolved, or simply the fact that you are alive and able to breathe. He taught us that gratitude should be specific. Instead of saying, "Thank you for everything," identify concrete situations. For example, "Thank you for my son's phone call this morning. Thank you for the strength to face that challenge at work. Thank you for the peace I feel at this moment." When we practice gratitude in this way, something extraordinary begins to happen. Our brain naturally starts searching for more reasons to be grateful. It is like training a muscle. The more we exercise it, the stronger it becomes. He observed that people who practiced this form of gratitude before going to sleep began noticing more blessings in their lives. Gratitude also has a direct effect on our rest. When we fall asleep with a grateful heart, our sleep becomes deeper and more restorative. He explained that this is because gratitude releases our spirit from the unnecessary burdens we often carry. One special practice he recommended was keeping a small notebook beside the bed. Before going to sleep, write down 3 reasons for gratitude. They do not need to be great events. Sometimes the most meaningful blessings come in the form of small moments. A kind smile, a ray of sunshine, or a hot cup of coffee. This practice of gratitude that he shared with us is like a key that opens the first door toward a peaceful night and an awakening filled with hope. It is the first step in transforming not only our nights, but our entire existence. The second word he taught us to say before going to sleep is, "Forgive me." This practice is essential for freeing our heart from everything that prevents us from truly resting. He understood that we often go to bed carrying burdens that do not belong to us. Have you noticed how the mistakes of the day, however small, tend to seem enormous when we lie down? He explained that this happens because our conscience naturally seeks peace, and this peace only comes when we are honest with ourselves and with God about our actions. But pay attention. When we speak about acknowledging our mistakes before sleeping, this does not mean torturing ourselves with guilt or remorse. The Pope taught that this moment of acknowledgement should be an act of love toward ourselves. It is like cleaning a wound. It may be slightly uncomfortable, but it is necessary for healing. The practice of forgiveness Francis shared throughout his pastoral journey has several levels. The first is honestly recognizing our own mistakes. We do not need to make an exhaustive list of every minor fault, but we should identify those attitudes or words that we know were not right. It is a moment of sincerity with ourselves. The second level is asking for forgiveness with a sincere heart. Francis reminded us that this is not a magical formula or a collection of memorized words, but an authentic dialogue with God in which we acknowledge our limitations and our desire to become better. It is like speaking with a loving Father who already knows our heart. But there is a third level that many people forget: forgiving ourselves. The Pope observed that many people were able to ask forgiveness from God and others, yet continued carrying the weight of self-criticism and self-judgment. This step is crucial for completing the cycle of forgiveness. How can we put this teaching into practice before sleeping? Take a few minutes to reflect on your day, not as a harsh judge, but as an understanding observer. Ask yourself, what could I have done better today? Whom might I have hurt through my words or actions? At what moment did I fail to act according to my values? The Pope taught that this exercise should be followed immediately by a concrete act of forgiveness. It may be as simple as saying, "I acknowledge my mistakes, and I commit myself to doing better tomorrow." What matters is that these words come from the heart and are accompanied by a genuine desire to change. It is also important to understand that this practice does not concern only serious offenses. Sometimes it is the small attitudes that weigh most heavily on our conscience. A harsh word spoken to a family member, a moment of impatience at work, or a negative thought that we entertained longer than necessary. Francis explained that when we practice this nightly acknowledgement, something wonderful happens. We begin to become more aware of our actions throughout the day. It is as though an inner light were switched on, helping us make better decisions in the present moment. This practice also has a direct effect on the quality of our sleep. When we go to bed with a light heart, having acknowledged and released our mistakes, our rest becomes deeper and more restorative. The Pope said that it is like going to bed after cleaning and organizing our inner home. The third and final word Francis encouraged us to say before going to sleep is, "I trust." This apparently simple expression contains one of the most powerful actions we can perform before resting: completely surrendering our worries. The Pope discovered that many people spend sleepless nights because they cling to situations they cannot control. How many times have you gone to bed thinking about problems that have no immediate solution, worries concerning work, family, health, or the future? He understood that these worries are like chains that bind us and prevent us from truly resting. That is why he taught a practical way to free ourselves from these burdens. The practice of trust he proposed is not merely a declaration of faith. It is a conscious act of surrender, a moment in which we decide to release everything that weighs us down. It is like emptying a heavy backpack we have been carrying throughout the day. Every worry we surrender becomes a burden we no longer have to carry. But how can we practice this surrender effectively? The Pope taught a simple but profound method. Before sleeping, identify the 3 main worries occupying your mind. Do not try to minimize or justify them. Simply acknowledge them as they are. The next step is crucial. For each worry you identify, make a conscious declaration of surrender. For example, I surrender this situation at work that is worrying me. I cannot resolve it while I sleep, so I choose to trust. It is an act of wisdom to recognize that there is a time to act and a time to rest. Francis reminded us on several occasions that we often resist this surrender because we feel it is a form of abandonment or irresponsibility, but nothing could be further from the truth. Surrendering our worries before sleeping is an act of emotional and spiritual intelligence. It is the acknowledgement that we need rest in order to face our challenges with renewed energy. One special practice he proposed was visualizing each worry as an object that we place inside a box. When we close this box, we consciously choose to trust that solutions will arrive at the proper time. This does not mean denying our problems, but choosing not to allow them to steal our peace during the night. This practice of trust has an immediate effect on our nervous system. When we consciously decide to release our worries, our body responds. The tension in our shoulders decreases, our breathing becomes deeper, and our mind begins to grow quiet. Francis also observed that people who practice this nightly surrender awaken with greater mental clarity and energy. In addition, this practice teaches us something valuable about control. It teaches us that much of our nighttime anxiety comes from wanting to control situations that are beyond our reach. When we practice surrender, we learn to distinguish between what we can change and what we must accept. An important aspect of this practice is consistency. Francis insisted that surrender should become a nightly habit as natural as brushing our teeth. Over time, you will notice that worries lose their power over you, not because they magically disappear, but because you learn to manage them more wisely. This third expression, I trust, completes the cycle of nightly practices together with gratitude and forgiveness. Trust forms a protective shield that allows us to truly rest and awaken renewed, ready to face a new day with hope and strength. These 3 expressions, thank you, forgive me, and I trust, form a secure path toward peaceful nights and days filled with hope. They are like 3 keys that, when used together, open the doors to a fuller and more protected life. Think for a moment about what your life would be like if every night before going to sleep you sincerely practiced these 3 expressions. Imagine waking every morning with a grateful heart, free from guilt and without the weight of worry. This transformation is possible for every one of us. The beauty of these practices lies in their simplicity. They do not require hours of dedication or complicated rituals. You need only a few minutes before sleeping and a heart willing to grow. Francis understood that true spiritual transformation finds its power in simplicity. Let us remember these 3 steps together. First, give thanks for everything you have and for everything that is still to come. This act of gratitude opens your heart to receive more blessings. Second, acknowledge your mistakes and free your conscience through forgiveness. This honesty with yourself allows you to grow and improve each day. Third, surrender your worries and trust that everything has its proper time and its solution. It has been observed that those who practice these 3 expressions experience remarkable changes in their lives. Not only does the quality of their sleep improve, but they also begin to see life from a different perspective. Their problems do not magically disappear, but their ability to face them becomes stronger. I invite you tonight, before going to sleep, to put these 3 expressions into practice. Do not wait until your circumstances are perfect. Do not wait until you feel completely ready. The time to begin is now. As Francis once said, every night is a new opportunity to transform our lives. If this message has touched your heart, click the subscribe button and activate the notification bell. Why is this so important? Because every week I share vital information like this, revelations and advice that can protect your life and the lives of your loved ones. Share this message with those you love. Many people need to hear these words of hope and transformation. Wisdom remains alive through those of us who put these teachings into practice. I invite you to write in the comments how these 3 expressions have affected your life. Sharing your experience may inspire others to begin their own journey of renewal. And remember, this is not about repeating empty words, but about creating a sacred moment every night, a space of encounter with yourself and with your faith. These 3 expressions, thank you, forgive me, and I trust, are part of the spiritual legacy Francis shared with us, a gift that can transform our nights and, through them, our entire lives.